We had heard the stories a million times, but that only made the old Pizza Time theater even more tempting for the town's local teen population. The place had been abandoned for years, standing like a ghost on the edge of our small town. It was rumored to be haunted, but I didn't even know why. For me, though, it was mostly just a great opportunity to create content for my horror-themed vlog. Only problem was, I couldn't find anyone who was brave enough to go check it out with me. There were 5 of us in my core group at school: me, Tom, Jake, Lisa, and Emily. As we left school one day, we ran into Old Man Harris, the town's eccentric, who was always lurking around the school. I guess he was some kind of engineer in the past, but nowadays he just kind of wandered the town, saying weird stuff to people. Anyway, his eyes lit up with a glint as he saw us and approached.
"Hey kids,"
he said, his voice raspy and low.
"I found this brochure you might be interested in."
He handed us a faded, crumpled pamphlet. The cover advertised a reopening event at the Pizza Time Theater, promising a night of nostalgia, fun, and prizes. Reopening, huh? That place has been closed for years, Lisa said, looking at the brochure. The old man shrugged his shoulders, turned, and awkwardly walked away. Thanks, I said as we walked the other way, pretty weirded out by the whole interaction. Might be cool to check it out, just to see what's there, Tom said with a chuckle. The group nervously laughed, but seemed somewhat on board. I smiled, wondering if this was finally my opportunity to go. Turns out, the thrill of exploring the old restaurant was too enticing to resist. So later that night, armed with flashlights and the bravado only teenagers possess, we headed out to the edge of town to check out the place. Finally catching a glimpse of it beyond some trees, we slipped through a gap in the fence and made our way toward the dilapidated building. The facade was crumbling, windows shattered, and the marquee letters were faded and missing. It felt like stepping into another time. Okay, so it looks like it didn't reopen, I said, chuckling under my breath. Although that fact didn't seem to matter, because as soon as we saw a cracked window, we all climbed in anyways. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the smell of decay. Our flashlights cast long, eerie shadows as we navigated the dark, silent halls. We found the main dining area easily enough. The stage was still there in all its glory, covered in decades of dust and cobwebs. Oddly enough, though, there was just one lone animatronic up on the stage. It was a Madame Oink, who was a long-retired figure from decades before, with a truly terrifying look to her. Kind of like a Miss Piggy, but with some disproportional facial features. She stood at the center of the stage, her once bright colors faded, her eyes dull and lifeless. Even in the dark, it was obvious how scary she looked. I'm gonna go explore the back, Tom suggested, obviously trying to get out of that area. Let's meet back here in 10 minutes. We all casually agreed and went our separate ways, each drawn to different parts of the building. I stayed behind, fascinated by the Madame Oink. Up close, she was even more unsettling. Her plastic skin was cracked, and her eyes seemed like they were looking at me, no matter where I stood. I froze as I thought I heard a faint snort echo through the room. My heart began racing. Guys, I called out, but only my echo answered, so I decided to go find them. The silence was now unnerving, and the longer I stayed alone, the more the shadows seemed like they were morphing into disturbing, grotesque figures, although I knew it was just my mind playing tricks on me. I made my way through the various rooms, calling out for my group, but there was only silence. As I wandered, passing old posters and memorabilia, I noticed in a dusty corner the remains of the animatronic character, Jasper T. Jowls, his dog-like features broken and rusted. The sight of his half-open, lifeless eyes sent a chill down my spine. The place felt like a graveyard of forgotten childhoods. I suddenly came across a torn piece of a scarf near the bathrooms, My pulse quickened as I realized it was Lisa's.
Guys?
Terrified, I rushed back into the main hall, hoping to find everyone there. But it was still empty, and Madame Oink was staring, her eyes now glowing faintly in the moonlight. Then I heard a noise from behind me, and before I could turn, there was a thud, and everything went black. I woke up in the dark. My wrists and ankles were chained to the ground, the cold metal digging into my skin. My mouth was dry, and the back of my head throbbed with pain. I tried to move, but the chains held strong. Panic set in as I realized I was trapped. In front of me, the stage was lit up. Madame Oink stood there, her eyes glowing a sinister green.
Welcome to my show.
She crooned in a distorted, mechanical voice. She started to move, her joints creaking and whirring. It was a grotesque parody of a performance. Her movements jerky and unnatural. I tried to scream, but suddenly something cold was shoved into my mouth. I gagged as I realized it was a piece of old, frozen pizza. I tried to spit it out, but another piece followed. The taste was vile, the texture revolting. Without much choice, I choked down the putrid food. As I turned, I saw Old Man Harris standing beside me, his face twisted into a grotesque grin.
Enjoying the show?
He sneered.
Madame Oink and I have been waiting for new guests. It's been too long.
In horror, I noticed that my friends were all there too, in the darkness, each one chained to the ground around the stage, their eyes wide with fear as they watched the nightmare unfold. Every time one of them screamed, Old Man Harris would shove more pieces of rotten, frozen pizza into their mouths, muffling their cries.
Keep watching,
he hissed, his eyes gleaming with madness. The reality of our situation sank in as I noticed tubes running from my arm to a dark, humming machine behind the stage. Blood slowly trickled through the tube, and I realized with growing dread that it was being drained to power the animatronic's grotesque performance. The more we screamed and struggled, the faster the blood flowed, speeding up the nightmarish spectacle. Then Old Man Harris finally approached me, holding up an old tape recorder. He pressed it to my mouth and spoke, his voice a menacing whisper.
Tell your followers about your grand adventure. I'm sure that everyone will want to see that great Madame Oink is back once again.